Wrestling podcast never felt this great. Tables, ladders, chairs, they tell it all. From the highest highs to the lowest fall. Grit and glory tales from the ring. Every chant, every cheer they'll bring. Devon and the Duke bring the heat. Wrestling tales knock you off your seat. Tune in now, don't you be late. Wrestling podcast never felt this great.
Brothers and sisters, welcome back. Welcome back to another exciting edition of the three-time award-winning podcast, Devon and the Duke, hosted by your main man, Duke Loves Wrestling, and of course, the five-time Hall of Famer, the YouTube sensation, the man that can't stop going viral, Brother Devon Dudley. What's going on there, bro?
What's going on, man? What I go viral for now?
You got to start saying, what didn't I go viral for at this point, right?
I mean, shit, when I can talk about a common cold and the shit go viral. I'm like, I don't get. I mean, everybody talks about a common cold.
Listen, as a mutual friend of ours would say, and we won't name any names, you're Devon. So I'll just leave it at that. You know what I mean? Of course.
Wow.
Of course you're going to go viral.
Wow. Boy, when I told you that was said to me, you ain't never lived that down. Especially coming from the person that said it.
Yeah. Yeah. But what did I say? I said, see? I told you. See? You know, that's the way it goes, man. That's the way it goes.
So even the people that hate me love me.
Yeah. Hey. What a place to occupy in life, right?
Listen, I'm okay with that because if you're bad-mouthing me or saying anything bad, then that means you're talking about me. So,
damn right.
And you get those haters on social media. It's okay.
Yeah. They act like it's their job to be that way. I don't understand it, but you know,
like their opinion actually matters.
Yeah,
and they're gonna change the way. It ain't gonna change the way I am.
Exactly. No, last week we went viral over you giving more context to Rudy Boy Gonzalez's story about you telling that fan to stop recording the private conversation that you were having with Rudy. A lot of folks latched onto that, and they thought that was good stuff, man. Just like Devon protecting the business and protecting standards, really. You know, these fans can't be crossing the line. It's the main idea. So a lot of folks like that.
You see us on TV. You see us doing our thing. And a lot of people can't separate that and think they have the right to say what they say to us. And you really don't. You know, you have to be respectful about it. And the worst thing I hate is when we're talking to each other in terms of me and another wrestler, what have you, and people are just standing there videotaping. And then I get, I'm sorry, I'll stop. I'm like, you were sorry from the get-go. You know you shouldn't have been doing that from the get-go, so why are you even doing it?
Damn right. That's common courtesy. That's basic respect. As a grown man, you shouldn't even have to be told that. But these fans, or a woman, good point, or a woman, you know, but these fans, sometimes they just take it too far, man. So that's crazy. It's funny, too, because Rudy, a couple days ago, he put up a post on Facebook. I don't know if you saw this or not, but he was highlighting a couple of folks on the independent scene right now. He talked about Gabriella Cruz, who used to be in NXT. She's now in Wild Superheroes. He talked about Ruthie J, who used to be in the NWA. She's available right now, too. But he started off talking about TNT, Terrence and Terrell. And he said the following. He said, TNT, Terrence and Terrell, sons of Devon Dudley, good boys, easy to work with, very respectful. Some guy had come in and expected to have things go their way. And Terrence and Terrell were very open to any ideas. When I see stuff like that, I basically put the ball in their court and I tell them, do what you guys agreed to do and just give me a good match. And that's exactly what they did. So I guess Rudy must have booked those Terrence and Terrell recently.
Yeah, he called me because he wasn't sure if they were my boys or not. But he was just verified. He says, "Hey, do you know TNT?" I said, "The wrestlers, the independent wrestlers?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Yeah, that's my son." And he's like, "Okay, I just wanted to make sure." Oh, yeah, those are my boys. I said, "Why? What'd they do?" So they go, "Oh, nothing." He was telling me about the show. He's putting them on and things like that. I go, "Oh, yeah, those are my boys."
Wow.
Because, again, I don't care how old you are. I don't care how old I am. If you're my kids and I raised you, if I hear that you disrespecting or not treating people the way they should be treated or what have you, I'm gonna put my foot in that ass.
Damn right. Listen. Wow.
I'm old school.
Listen,
I'm
Joe
old
Jackson,
school.
what's going on over here?
Listen, like Joe said, none of his kids were on drugs, none of them were in jail, none of them were teenage pregnancies, nothing like that. So yeah, he was hard. He was hard in what he did. His methods might not have been what we do today, but you know something? He made those boys superstars. And that's the thing that every one of those Jacksons said, including Michael. Michael didn't have the best relationship with him because of how he treated Michael and, teasing him about his nose and things like that. And the beatings when he didn't get a dance step right. I think that's a little harsh. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to beat Terrence and Terrell for not throwing the clothesline the right way. No, I don't do that. But the hard work that he did with those boys, it paid off. Now the Jackson Fives are a household name, even in this generation.
Well, listen, I just had Billy Gunn on Duke Loves Wrestling, and he said he's looking to book his boys versus he and Road Dogg at some point once Road Dogg physically can do it, so he can legally beat his sons without getting in trouble for it. So something about you guys from that generation, man. I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Well, no. It's not our generation. You part of that generation too. So I don't know who you fooling. You know damn well if you had kids our age, the kids that are 30 and some years old, if they were in the broadcasting business or what have you, and they didn't do right, man, listen. You can't tell me you'd be ready to put your foot in the air.
I'd be a lot worse than you, man. I think you're the gentle giant. I don't have time for that.
Well, I've been told that.
Listen,
I've been told.
Don't tell on me now. Don't tell on me to the world now, Devon. Come on.
Listen, especially when it came to me and Bubba, it's always said, and Bubba, I think Bubba hates it, because, they always say, Devon's the karma of the two and blah, blah, blah. But again, like I've always said, I understood Bubba's, philosophy and how he did things. I understood that, but sometimes it came off way too strong to a lot of people. And, they have a dislike for Bubba because of it. But I understood it. I've been around him long enough. Listen, in this wrestling business, you have to understand, people will take advantage if they can.
Yep.
And Bubba might have came off too hard or what have you, but no one messed with him. Because they knew that they would have to feel the wrath of Bubba. And, and it was the same with me in the sense, I was silent, and they usually say the silent ones are the ones you got to watch out for.
Yeah, I hear that.
I'm the one that doesn't, I'm not going to sit up here. If you say something disrespectful to me to a certain degree, as long as I can do with my kids or what have you, I'm not going to try to get one back over on you. I've never believed in that. I'll let God fight that battle.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I would not want to be on the wrong side of Devon Dudley because from what I understand, he don't have to use a belt, folks. He'll just break out the table. You already know what that means. So,
Oh, well, if I break out the table, it's lights out.
Once you do the cross and all that, yeah, it's over. It's over. I ain't playing with this man.
Yeah, but I like, I love my boys. They're very respectful and this and that. And I think he's helping them to get their point. And that's one of the things I didn't understand. My boys are green, they were green. They've been in the business, from TNA. and so forth and so on, and they're learning. But my thing is, there were questions we always asked, how come they haven't been looked at or picked up upon? They had a couple of tryouts, this and that, and didn't work out because they needed to grow. And that I understand. But, a lot of these Division One guys and all of that come into the wrestling business that pretty much don't have a clue, but yet they teach them. They teach them how to have a clue in the wrestling business. And I remember saying that to some of the upper in WWE. I'm like, just give them a chance.
Yeah, exactly. Because we see a lot of other folks get chances
Just give them
all
a chance.
the time, right?
Right. I mean, they're not ready. Neither were the people that you hired from these Division One schools and top of the line. They weren't ready either. But you gave them a chance. You gave them a shot. And believe me, they know more about wrestling than the people that you are bringing in that don't know nothing. And you can't say they're not athletes because they are. They're very good at what they do, but they're still a learning tree. They learn from me and Bubba. They've learned from Booker and things like that. Have somebody like a William Regal or a Terry Taylor, mentor them while they're there because they're not going to learn anything on the indies. I'm sorry. You're just not, because when you got young guys trying to teach young guys, it's just not going to work. They're never going to get to that next level. And that's one of the things that I've told certain powers to be, like Matt Bloom. I told him up there because they've always gotten, tell them to go out there and make a name for themselves and this and that. Yes, I agree with that. But at the same token, the things that you want them to understand and to learn about the wrestling business, they're not going to learn it on the indie circuit. They're just not. You don't have those minds that will be able to teach them. Bring them in for 6 months to a year. If it don't work out, okay, then do your cuts. But at least they got the opportunity to learn within that 6 months to a year. And that's one of the things that I've always stressed about them, that they really need to, learn from people that have come before them, like Terry Taylor, like, William Regal, and all the other guys that have been up there that are coaches, Norman Smiley. You can't learn from people that are trying to learn themselves. And and the thing about it is they all agree with me. All those names I said agreed with me. But yet they haven't had the opportunity or the chance. And no, I'm not bitter. It's the way the wrestling business is. And, the wrestling business has changed from the time when I broke into the business. It was a lot harder, And back then, a lot of the old timers back then did not want to school or help the younger guys because they were scared they were going to take their spots. But this generation is different now. And I just feel that, given the opportunity, and letting them really go up there and maybe try to showcase what they can do, it'll work. But again, you can't have them on the indie circuit trying to learn from younger guys. So thank Rudy for giving them the opportunity to do that. They're learning. They go to Germany. They're all over the place. It's very hard to get them in Japan right now because it's not as easy as it was back in the day when I was coming into business. And it's a little hard. So I love it that they're still doing it. They're grinding. They're still trying to make it, and they're still trying to do it. So, and everywhere they've gone, if I've gone there to do an autograph signing, or even at one point when I was wrestling, I wound up wrestling on those independent shows, the first thing I hear is, your boys are amazing. They're very respectful. They're eager to learn, and they really had a good match. And we definitely want to bring them back. So I'm always getting that response. So I'm like, good. I was like, well, hopefully the higher ups and other places can see that. In AEW, I don't know if they were given the right opportunity to go out there and to showcase what they can do and be under the learning tree of Billy Gunn or a Dean Malenko or even Arn Anderson when he was there. You had so many minds that would have been able to help them, get to that next level. So I'm very grateful that the opportunity that they had in AEW to be able to be on their TV and to showcase, regardless if they lost every match or not. It's not about winning, it's about learning. And I think that's one of the biggest things that they understand. I just had a conversation with one of them, Terrence, that said, if people ride us and try to get a rise out of us, that's fine because we know we're learning and we know that we have to pay our dues. And I agree with him on that, because again, I tell people all the time, this business nowadays is not about what you know anymore, or even who you know at some point, and I feel that they, given the right opportunity and given the chance, they'll be able to do what they'll be able to do wonders, but they got to be given that opportunity first. And if me coming on the show saying this, if this gets people to go, okay, let's get these boys an opportunity or what have you, then let's do it. And if they don't make it, and if they get cut within 6 months to a year, then they get cut. At least they had the opportunity to do it. And then you got to go back to the drawing board and figure out why you got cut, why it didn't work out. But there's definitely a story there. You're the second generation of the Dudley boys. And, whether you bring me or Bubba in, we're already on Legends deal. Bubba's already doing LFG. Why not, get them a personality or persona to be up on that show to see what they can do. Second generation wrestlers, not everybody sucks, so to speak. So, and again, when you're hearing it from other promoters and, other people saying that, your boys are really good, I want to have them back and this and that shows me they got a little something. But now it's time to really bring it out. And that's what I'm eager to try to do for them.
Well said. Well said. And shout out to TNT, Terrence and Terrell. Shout out to Rudy Boy Gonzalez. That was really an awesome post. And Rudy's been doing that. He makes sure that he highlights different indie wrestlers out there to let people know who's available, who's doing good business. And he gives his assessment on why he believes that folks should do business with these folks. So, And
if I'm not mistaken, I believe Rudy took over Shawn Michaels' school, correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. Rudy broke into the business under Joe Blanchard back in '82, and he was a mainstay in all the different NWA territories and the Saturday morning shows for the WWF. Rudy, Dusty Wolf, Iron Mike Sharp, those guys. Those are enhancement talents that everybody had wrestled back then. But in the early 2000s, when Shawn Michaels opened up the Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy, he eventually had Rudy come in and do the actual training of the students because Shawn had the bad back and all that stuff that he was healing from. And Shawn trusts Rudy's wrestling ability to be able to pass that down. So when you look at Bryan Danielson, when you look at Brian Kendrick, Paul London, we can go down the whole list there. That was Rudy who actually was in the ring physically training those guys. So when Shawn went back to WWE, he gave the school to Rudy essentially to keep going. And Rudy rebranded as Texas Wrestling Academy. So that's the story there.
And the thing about it is Shawn Michaels, of all people, who, from my understanding, it's hard to get his trust. You have to really earn it. So for Rudy to do that, that's great. And for all of those names that you just mentioned that came out of there you go. They're being taught by somebody who Shawn Michaels trusted to be able to take on the name of Shawn Michaels School and enough to where he had these stars come out and they became, very Brian, Daniel, big names in major companies. So there you have it. And for Rudy to say that about the boys, I mean, that's just great right there. That's a resume in itself to put on, so there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of there you go, and speaking of family, happy birthday to the bishop.
Yeah, my mother, Reverend Dr. Renee Washington Hughes, Gardner. And people say, well, damn, she got all those names. Well, my biological father and mother never married. So my mother kept her maiden name, of course. And when I was born, I got the Hughes name. And then she got married to my dad, who I call my dad, uh, Preston Robert Washington Sr. And he was a great man. He was a bishop himself. And, right before he passed, and he was deemed the Prince of Harlem because he did so many great things in Harlem. All the buildings that were renovated was my father. He got that work done. He worked for a company, excuse me, called HHCI, which they build homes and things like that, especially during the time in the 80s when housing communities were discriminating against people with AIDS. Because, again, we weren't schooled enough to realize how you get the virus and how, everybody just thought it was a gay thing. And if you drank from the same milk carton from a guy with AIDS, that you were going to get it. Nobody was really schooled on how AIDS was really, done. And if you were gay, you had to have AIDS. That was the thing back then. And so there was a lot of housing developments that were discriminating against it. My father found out about it and did his work and, made housing affordable for people with AIDS and HIV and really did the work. He did a lot of work. He worked with Giuliani. He worked with Hillary Clinton and Senator Charles Rango. I'm not even sure if Charles is still in his seat anymore, but my father did very, very good work. So she kept his name, which is the Washington name. And then when my father passed away in 2003, about 2.5, almost 3 years later, she found her new husband, Sean Gardner, who's a pastor himself. He's also a lead detective um, in New York City. He's also he's in the military branch. He's in the Army Reserves, and he still does work with them. And then she took on the Gardner name. So she kept all three, and I think keeping Hughes was because of her dad. Her dad, who my middle name is after him, is Edgar, Devon Edgar Hughes. He passed away. He was in the Navy, and he fell off one of the ships and hit his head. And he basically was, in the hospital for a long period of time. And right before he passed away, he told my grandmother, please name my daughter, if it's a girl, Renee. And back then, they didn't do the test to find out if it was going to be a girl or a boy. They didn't have that technology or equipment like that to do that then. But he said if she's a girl, please name her Renee. And that's what he did. That's what my grandmother did. And she basically did that. So when I was born, in honor of her father, because she never met him because he passed away, she gave me his middle name, which I'm very proud of. And it's just one of those things where there's a thing behind everything. So my mom is a great woman. She is the speaker for all the churches in New York City now. She works with different congressmen, things like that, and she's very, very proud of her work that she's done. I'm very proud of her. The family's very proud of her. Like I said in my Hall of Fame speech, and I've said numerous times, we both came from the projects. She had me at 16. She was pregnant at 15, had me at 16. And we had nothing. We was on, welfare and food stamps and all of that, to try to survive and to get by during that time in the 70s and 80s. And she got her doctorate degree, went to school and everything. My grandmother was the fist of the family. She was able to hold down the fort. And in every Black family, there's always that strong grandmother that holds the fort down. And that was her. And she basically did that. And my mother got her, life together, got saved in 1987, and watched me on the choir singing one day. And the Lord touched her and blessed her. And she became what she is now. So I'm very proud of her.
And to be 70 years old and to look the way she does, listen, I'm still a little bit upset at some of these fans that when I put her on my Instagram with her and they go, damn, Devon's mom looks younger than him. All right, stop the nonsense. Okay. Regardless if it's true or not, I don't get that offended because that's my mom and she looks great. But listen, you ain't got to go there. I don't look that old. Kiss my behind. Kiss my ass. Let me say that. The Reverend said kiss his ass. So, no, but in all honesty, and all jokes aside, I'm very proud of her. She turned 70 today and she looks amazing. She's in Albany, New York now at a conference speaking. And, she was very thankful. She didn't see the Instagram post, but I text her some words and she was, crying. She was thankful. And, she said, she was very happy to be able to live to see 70 and to see all of her kids become successful. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she has 13 or 15 grandkids. Because remember, I got 5 brothers. But I think I'm the only one with 7 kids. So this is why the grandkids basically jumped to a higher number. But, she's very happy. She's content. And hopefully, she'll be able to make that move down here to Florida because she's ready to retire and come down and live a little easier and simple life. And she said Florida is definitely one of the places she's looking at. So hopefully, like they do for WrestleMania, when you put the bid in to get WrestleMania to your place, hopefully I could put the bid in and say, come on down to Florida. Come with me. Come live next to me. So again, happy birthday to my mom, Reverend Dr. Renee. I'm getting confused. Dr. Reverend Renee Francis Washington Hughes Gardner.
Ooh. She sounds like she's African with all those names. What's going on here?
Listen. I tell her that all the time. She goes, oh, boy, you so stupid.
Listen, don't whoop me for that, Mom. I was just joking now. Please don't whoop me for that.
Listen, I tell her all the time. I said, the beatings you gave me, if I went to the precinct right now and told them all the stuff you did to me, I said, they would lock you up just on pure principle alone for the beatings you gave me. But I tell her all the time, I say, you know what? I'm very grateful for it. I don't look back at it and say my mother abused me or what have you. She whooped me when I was supposed to be whipped, as a kid growing up in Brooklyn, New York, and being around the people that I was around, a lot of my friends wind up dead or in jail or on drugs. And it's sad, but it's the truth. But her and my grandmother made sure that I didn't follow in that statistic. And I'm very proud and happy of that. So all the beatings and all the lectures and all that other stuff, saying no 90% of the times to the things I wanted, it made me who I am today. And that's exactly how I raised my kids. Have I made mistakes along the way? Absolutely. Am I perfect? No, not by any means. But I try to do exactly how they taught me. And this is why my kids are so respectful. I don't believe in that pants hanging down to the ground, talking all that stuff. When you talk to me correct. You're not putting that slang in your talk. I want proper English and the proper respect, and that's the way I am. Because if you don't, I'm going to bust your ass. It's as simple as that. I'm not playing. And, my boys are big. They're bigger than me now. Dad's lost some weight and lost some size to him. But I got my bat on the side of my bed. I'm like, all right, now, you can try if you want, but I'm aiming for the legs. I tell them all the time, and they laugh. I go, I'm not playing. I'm too old to be fighting somebody, but I take that bat and break them legs. I said, but remember, if I do it, it's out of love.
Jesus Christ! I'll tell you, this is why you can't mess with the Hughes family, the Dudley family, so to speak, because you're hearing it right here, boy. Oh my God! Oh my God! But Devon, again, and this is something that we always hear. The fans love to hear you talk about family and your values, and tell these stories. About growing up and what have you, because so many of us can relate. And it just once again shows, despite the fact that you're this big, famous, rough and tumble wrestler. You got the scar tissue on your head and all that good stuff. You're just a regular family man at the end of the day, and who can't respect that?
Exactly. Like I said, listen, I've done wrong. I've fallen from grace. I've done things that I'm not proud of. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like one of these politicians that sit there and try to preach to you about bringing them into office and don't do this and don't do that when they've done that. No, I've done that. I'm telling you I've done that, especially during the Attitude Era, because we were partying and drinking and carrying on and acting stupid. But, I've asked for forgiveness and, I've prayed on it and prayed on it. And I think because of the success that I'm having now, I have been forgiven. And the thing about it is I don't do it anymore. I stopped that. Everybody has done something in their lives that they're not proud of, whether they've done something or have said something. I went on my YouTube channel, talked about me using steroids and things like that. I'm not going to wait for some idiot to say, "Oh, well, Devon, didn't you used to use steroids?" But no, I'm going to tell you before you get to tell the story, because I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you what I did when I did it. And yes, it was when I was in TNA. The old regime when Dixie Carter was involved in her regime. I did do it back then. I left WWE and I was trying to get in the best shape I possibly could. But the bottom line was when I used it, didn't realize that once I stopped, that my body would fall the way it did. And it did. It felt bad. And I had to regroup, get a personal trainer, go out there and get my body back to where, it had to be. And I did that. And we talked about that on my YouTube channel too with Vince Russo, how I had to get a stern talking to. Devon, you're falling off. You're looking the way you used to look. You're not doing anything. So I had to go back and really, really, find myself again. So again, I'm basically going and telling the story of my wrongs and my wrongdoings because I don't want nobody to have to go through what I went through. And everybody's going to go through their trials and tribulations. Everybody's going to have to find their way out of it, just like I did. But it was through the grace of God that I was able to do that and find myself again and to be able to admit my wrongdoings and to say I'm sorry. That's one of the biggest things, and ask for forgiveness.
Indeed. And that's why nothing but respect. Nothing but respect. You never try to act like you're perfect. You are a flawed human being just like God made you. And being open about that.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised the first time the first time you told me that you did try steroids, we were recording. And I'm sitting there like, wait a second. This guy is like spilling stuff that no one would have ever thought that Devon Dudley was on steroids. And you and I talked about this before. You're surprised that people looked at you even back then when you were all jacked up and just assumed, all right, he's in the gym putting in work. So the fact that you openly admit that, it's just like, wow, this guy he might be honest to a fault. Like he ain't even trying to hide it, But I like the philosophy though.
I refuse to hide it because, again, I don't want nobody putting me in the light where Devon thinks he's holier than thou, because I've read some things, even on my Instagram or in other YouTube videos and things like that. Like people, are upset with me because I have decided to forgive Hogan for the things that he had said and the things they did. Listen, I can't speak. And like I said before, I can't speak on the relationships that he has had with other people in the business, whether it be Bret Hart, Randy Orton, the NWO, people like that, and other people that have said that he's done what he's done to them. That's their story. That's not my story. I can only tell the story of how he helped me when he didn't have to in TNA to get myself back, and the things that he did when I did the charity event for Hope for a Single Mom, for women with cancer, and how he came to the show, he did the show, and he sat there, had to be over 1,000 people that was in line for an autograph, and he sat there and signed every single autograph that they brought to him, and he did it for free. He didn't charge any money, nothing. He didn't charge me money. He didn't charge the people money. He did it for free. So again, yes, I'm going to say that he did great things. I'm going to say again, I don't know the stories, but I know some people felt that he did them wrong, and that's fine. But again, I'm telling you from my perspective on the man, which is why I forgave him, especially when he comes to me personally and tells me that he's sorry. I can't speak for anyone else. And if anybody has an issue or a problem with that, then that's something you got to take up for yourself, because it's not going to change my views on how I feel. If the Bible says you have to forgive, then I'm going to forgive. Because when it comes time for you to be judged on Judgment Day, he is not going to forgive you. So you can have that persona from the world. I ain't going to forgive him. And this and that, what he said, that's fine. Understand this. There are other wrestlers that we look up to today that have done the same thing and said the same thing that man has said, and probably worse, and still to this day continue to say it. So again, but you look at them in a high regard, but you denounce Hogan. And again, I understand how people feel, because it was very hurtful. When I looked at that documentary and I saw from 1983, let's say, to, up to the him and Warrior leading up to WrestleMania at the not Superdome, it was in Canada. When I looked from 84 to 1990, I remember the joy that the character Hulk Hogan, not Terry Bollea, but the character Hulk Hogan had given me, the joy of enjoying pro wrestling. And like everybody, he did that for. So again, this is why I say I forgive him, because of what he did for me as a child, growing up in Brooklyn. Me wanting to watch him and Piper, him and Morocco, Snooker. I mean, the list goes on of all the greats that have come during that time, during the Hogan and Andre era. Again, and me going to him and telling him that, he was almost, he got teared up, because again, I'm speaking from the heart. I'm telling him how I felt. And for those that don't understand it and say, oh, Devon, we're not listening to you, forget, that's BS and blah, blah, blah. I still don't like the man. He's still a racist and this and that. No, I'm not saying that. And again, I'm not saying that if you don't want to forgive him, that's on you. That's you. That's your cross. That's something that you have to bear. But I have. And again, I don't mean to go on and on about something that we've already talked about. But for some reason, sometimes God puts in my heart to talk about things that needs to be addressed and fully understand. Because there's people out there that still don't understand why I have forgiven him, or why that I chose to take the route that I've taken. And this is why.
Well said. Well said. That's what people tune in for. They tune in for the raw honesty here on Devon the Duke, but they know that you're not a gimmick. They know that when you speak, you're speaking from the heart, and you're not trying to harm anybody, but you are going to tell the truth as it is. Speaking of which, unfortunately, it's that time of year. The WWE releases, and this year feels a little bit different because we've had some big names, some really big names be released. At the top of the list, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston, 2/3 of the New Day. Big E is an employee of the company. He's a broadcaster, so he wasn't cut because he wasn't a wrestler under a wrestling contract, so to speak. But the two wrestlers, Kofi and Woods, they're gone. WWE allegedly asked them to take a contract reduction, and they declined and asked to be released, and WWE granted them their request. So I guess it's a little different. It's not a release like, say, the Wyatt Six or some of those folks were legitimately, they were just shown the door. New Day asked to be let out of their deal if the WWE couldn't come to an agreement contractually with them. And WWE said, okay, fine. From a general standpoint, Devon, because I don't want you to, get too deep into other people's business, so to speak, but from a general standpoint, what are your thoughts about the mass releases in general, because they happen every quarter, but also those two guys in particular. I mean, there was nothing that they could find these guys to do to justify, keeping them at the rate that they were at. I mean, it just seems kind of off to me, man.
Well, I don't know too much about the story, but what I'm gathering from the information that I'm getting, I don't know if it was WWE. I think that was a TKO decision. And I hate that, TKO is getting the blame for pretty much everything, whether it's ticket prices or the releases. But, they're corporate. And I've always said corporate will never work in the wrestling business. It'll be the downfall of the wrestling business. And you can't do wrestling like it's corporate. You just can't, because there's so much involved. There's so much different things that are involved in that. So you really can't do it like that. But unfortunately, I think that's what it was. I think Hunter would have loved to have kept them and whatever, but I just feel that it was a corporate decision that was being made. And like I said, corporate is never good in the wrestling business because they don't get it, nor do they understand it. They're looking at the dollar. The dollar. That's the bottom line to them, is the dollar. And this is why they're corporate. So, it was sad for me to hear that. But again, times have changed in the wrestling business. It's not the same. And the way things are done now are totally different compared to when I first broke into the business. Loyalty, things like that. I don't think it has any room anymore in the wrestling business. Because again, when corporate's involved, it's not about loyalty. It's about the bottom line, the dollar. And I think that's what might have happened in this scenario, in this case. So again, it was sad because, again, me and Bubba coming back in 2015 in August to interrupt the New Day celebration and to introduce us back into the mix. I will always be grateful for that. I'm very grateful for Xavier, very grateful for Big E, and very grateful for Kofi for even allowing us to be able to come in and to let us do what we did that night. We had great matches, great stories with them, and, I had a good time. But like everything else in life, everything has an expiration date. And you have to know that when the time is up, it's up, and you have to move on. We may not like it, but we have to deal with it.
Yeah, we have to deal with it. And I'll just say that I absolutely, positively am so grateful for the New Day and what they accomplished, because those guys were able to break through at a period in time where WWE was getting called to the carpet for their lack of support for black male wrestlers, especially in the singles division. Because even though New Day were a unit, they all went off and had great singles careers while still being part of New Day, which was so important. Those guys made history. And it's heartbreaking to know that they could be shown the door. But you know what? We've seen it a million times. You could be gone, today and back tomorrow. Time heals wounds. And who knows what's out there that could be a better opportunity for them as well. Because these guys are not fools. So if they're walking away from whatever WWE was trying to get them to take, I got to imagine that there must be greener pastures for them out there, whatever that is. So shout out to both of those guys,
I don't think that the public has to worry about them at all. I don't think so at all. New Day is going to be fine. Trust me when I say it. They're going to be fine. They're going to be able to, they've got outside things that they're doing. They did the right thing with their money. And, they're going to be fine.
Hey, you hear that? I'm going to call that breaking news. If anyone was worried, Uncle Devon just told you, don't worry too much now. Don't worry
too much. They're going to be fine.
They're not going to miss any meals.
Biggie has and Biggie
Big E has a great position as being an employee, and if anybody knows about being an employee, it's me.
Yeah.
There's great benefit with becoming an employee of the company. Believe it or not, it's better as an employee than talent. I mean, with talent, you are basically you can be let go and whatever at any time, but as an employee, it's a little bit harder.
Well, thank God for that, because Big E, the last thing we want is for him to get released too. Come on, he's just at the beginning of his broadcasting career, and there's a lot of promise there. So we want to see that continue to develop.
Exactly.
But I'll just say this to TKO. Listen, I understand business. I understand making tough decisions that are best for business. I understand that because you guys are a publicly traded company, you have a fiduciary responsibility to do whatever it takes to find profit, to make the right business decisions for the business, not for any individual, not for anybody's feelings, not for anybody else's family, but for business and for your investors. I get that, and I defend that. So don't get me wrong. But I will say this. There is a pain threshold. And I think that I don't believe that there are enough people in the room that you're listening to who are sounding the alarm, because there is a threshold and there's just certain people you find a way to hold on to. And Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston, I don't know, man. I think that here we go again. You're going to hurt your locker room, and you're going to create the conditions that will usher in a union. And I know you don't want that, TKO, but it's coming because you guys are effing up. That's my opinion. That's not D-Bon's opinion. That's my opinion. You're effing up with some of these moves. And at some point, these wrestlers are going to start getting smart and protect themselves. And what does that mean? You're the biggest fish in the whole lake. That means that they're going to drop you to your knees, because the last thing you want is for them to find a way to compete. Tony Khan may have messed up, but that doesn't mean the next guy will. The next guy might figure it out.
And you know what, Duke? You say that about Tony Khan, but Tony Khan can turn this whole thing around.
That's true.
And I hope he does.
That's true.
A lot of people think I bury Tony. I don't bury him. What I want is for Tony to get the help that he needs to get that company to where it needs to be. That's what I would like. So it's not that I don't hate Tony. Listen, I hope that Tony can actually do what he says he wants to do for the wrestling company and make this business great again. Not to take a saying from Trump,
Bigly.
but this generation has no idea how the business was. You really don't. And the young people breaking in don't understand how the business was. Some people might not think that the way we did business back then was right or fair, but you have to understand this business was protected. And for people from the outside that tried to get in that had no business getting in, you had to prove your loyalty. You had to prove that you deserved to be there. And so many wrestling stars that are stars from yesterday are the reason why they're stars is because they followed that same blueprint.
Well said. Well said. TKO, this is the Duke talking to you. Figure it out. Make sure you're treating your people right. Do not create your enemy that ultimately takes you down, because I can see it. I'm reading the tea leaves, and I can see it. I can see it happening. This generation is different from previous generations. They're far more educated. They are far more savvy. And with the technology, they're far more capable than ever before. I'm giving you a warning, TKO. You will regret it if you don't start treating those talent better. And that doesn't necessarily always mean money and all that other good stuff, but you got to treat them better, man. You can't be messing with the morale, because if they all just decide that they're not going to perform, in the middle of your show, what are you going to do? If they just protest, what are you going to do? You can't fire everybody,
Right. And I will say this.
I will say this. I've always said this, and I've said this before I even knew TKO was coming in. I've said this years prior to that. Corporate will never work in the wrestling business. It's two different things. And unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but I feel that if corporate gets involved in the wrestling business, there will be no more wrestling business. I firmly believe that.
We're getting there. And I think this is the test case, to be honest. I think you got to bring in somebody who understands how to maintain the right morale and atmosphere to keep things moving forward. And I do not believe that is the case right now. I don't believe it. I believe the complete opposite. I believe you got this venture capital, part of my French, folks, bullshit. It's bullshit where you're putting profit over people to a degree that all you're doing is sucking the dollars. And here's what pisses me off. And I'm sorry, Dio, I don't mean to go on a tangent, and I hope this doesn't get you any heat. But here's what put me over the edge, because listen, I come from the corporate world. I come from the political world. I've been there, done that. I understand. I've managed businesses. I've built up businesses. I've done economic redevelopment of entire neighborhoods in major cities. I understand. But here's what pissed me off. When the TKO executives are giving themselves fat multi-million-dollar bonuses, while at the same time kicking people to the curb like this, you lose me. You lose me. And I'm going to tell you, this past season, I was watching more American Idol than I was Raw. So I've watched less wrestling over the past, 3-4 months than I ever had my entire life. You're losing me. And that ain't good. I'm telling you, TKO, find somebody who understands how to manage people properly, how to do right by people, because those people exist. And find the right balance of business and morale. And if you do that, then you will keep everything secure. But if you keep going in the road that you're going, that's going to be the end of it. Mark my words. Sorry, Devon.
I've always said this. No, you're fine. I agree with everything you're saying. I've always said what works in the real world does not work in the wrestling world. And what works in the wrestling world does not work in the real world. It's two totally different forms of being when it comes to doing business. There's a reason why so many of these companies from the past, AWA, Georgia Championship Wrestling, all the ones that were back then, Florida Championship Wrestling, there was a reason why at one point in time they were very successful. Now you'll have people saying, well, they all went out of business too, Devon, and blah, blah, blah. Yes, but why'd they go out of business? Because you had a man called Vincent Kennedy McMahon that went there and got all the talent, brought it all to the WWF, made the 80s what it is. And unfortunately, when you take the main stars, it's going to go down.
Absolutely.
And it was like the Titanic. A lot of them left, and their companies that they came from could not survive. That's why we don't have those companies anymore. Not saying that within time it wouldn't have happened, but that's exactly what happened. Vince went and took all of the people and left them anything. Not NWA. Oh God.
AWA. Yeah.
AWA, and Burns said it best. He was like, what could I do? They took our biggest star. They took Hogan. They took Jesse. They took Mean Gene Oakland. They took everybody. Vern had nobody. And he couldn't rebuild again. It was too tough. It was too rough. And they wind up closing the doors. So that's why we don't have a lot of it. No, I'm not blaming Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon was a shrewd businessman. He did what he had to do to make his product. Back then, they should have had contracts. Nobody thought about that then. People didn't start getting contracts. Correct me if I'm wrong, Duke, until the Monday Night War started.
Yeah, that's when they started getting more serious about it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, certain people had contracts, but not everybody did. Everything was built on a handshake. And when you realized that you couldn't do that no more, then you had to go the route of everybody being signed into a contract. You know what I liked about, and I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. What I liked about back then was with all these different organizations that were around back then in the '80s and even early '90s. If you were in WWE and you outstayed your welcome and you weren't as popular or what have you as you once was, you could leave and go to 4 or 5 different territories, rebuild yourself, and then eventually come back to WWE and start off fresh again. You don't have that anymore. You have TNA, you have AEW, and that's about it. You have the AAA, you have people, you have small companies like that. But again, there's really nowhere to go once you leave, and the rosters are so big on AEW, TNA, AAA. I mean, there's so many people already there that if you do leave WWE, how can you get in? That's always a hard thing too, as well. So again, the business has changed. It's not the same. And, a lot of historians or even people who, like you and I, used to watch it as a kid will tell you that it's different. You know, Loyalty is just no longer there anymore. It is thrown out the window and it's sad. It really is sad. But that's the times we live in now, and you got to go with it.
Well, you got to go with it until you do something about it. And I'm just telling you, you wrestlers out there who are active, you are out of your mind to continue to operate without a union. I don't care what anybody says, unions protect you and their strength in numbers.
The only thing, yeah, but Duke, the only thing with that is who are going to be the people that are going to do it. Remember, there's going to be some sacrifices if that happens now. People will lose their jobs.
Yeah.
Just like when Jesse tried to do it and Hogan blew the whistle
Yeah.
on it and told Vince, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe I had heard in a documentary that Vince had a meeting and said, if anybody shows up at this meeting, they'll be fired. Nobody wants to lose their job. They got families to feed and things like that. So, who's going to be brave enough to go, you know what? I'll stand up. I don't know if you'll have too many people. Again, these are kids now. These are not grown men like they were in the '80s and '90s when they came into a company and they were able to stand up to their bosses. They don't have that nowadays. You have young kids. I used to say this too when I was younger. When you were in your 20s and you were in WWE, you were that guy that got beat up all the time. You were the enhancement talent to help get these bigger stars over. Then when you got to the middle and your 30s and your mid 30s, you were like kind of maybe borderline mid card. You were those guys that were the mid card guys. You would get a win here and there, but nothing too big. By the time you got to your 40s and going into your 50s somewhat, you were the main event guy because you had knowledge behind you. You had experience. You had all of that. Nowadays, these young kids don't have that. And the biggest thing is they don't have the knowledge, to do something like that. I just don't feel like there are going to be enough people to be able to do that because, again, people are scared. They need the money. They need their jobs. The biggest thing they could ever do is make it to the WWE or AEW or TNA and become a star there. Nobody wants to have to take a chance on losing their job, and that's the scariest thing right now.
It's true, but here's what I say to that. And you're absolutely right. I'm not discounting anything you're saying there, and that's the reason why it's never happened in wrestling, but it's happened elsewhere. It exists. This is not a new problem to solve. It exists. And the only reason why it exists is because the majority of the people banded together. You can't fire everybody. You can fire some, but you can't fire everybody, and especially the bigger names. So it's going to take those guys sacrificing something in order to make it happen. But let me tell you something, brother. And we can close on this. We just found out that Ted Turner the man who created Time Warner and the Superstation TBS. He created CNN. He was the man that bought Jim Crockett Promotions and rebranded as World Championship Wrestling, the only promotion to ever knock the WWE on its knees. For 83 weeks, they kicked WWE's ass. He took his best shot at them, and for the most part, it looked like, they were going to put WWE out of business. So we can't say that it's not possible. Now imagine a Ted Turner type, and God bless Ted Turner and his family and his loved ones, rest in peace. If a Ted Turner type is okay with negotiating with the union, that will be the end of the WWE, because these TKO fat cats, and that's what you are, Ari. You're a fat cat. They're putting profit over people to the point where they don't give a damn. You got advertisements everywhere. Listen, I was with you. I was saying, well, so what about the ads? I don't care if there's an ad in the middle of the ring. So what? But now I'm looking at the fact that you guys are giving yourself these multi-million-dollar bonuses while you're putting people out there who can't even figure out where their next meal is going to be in a couple weeks when the severance runs out. It will take a Ted Turner type who has the money and who's willing to negotiate with a union, and that will knock you on your ass. And I'm telling you guys right now, it's coming.
I don't know who Ari is. I'm not sure who he is.
Ari Emanuel is the guy who runs TKO. He's the big boss. Yeah. That's the best way to describe him. He's the big boss.
I didn't know him.
he might show up at my door and knock me out after I said what I just said. All right, he's big boss.
It's either him or Cody. Which one you want? Which one do you?
Well, Cody has that Wheatley vodka. I might be able to take Cody because he has that Wheatley vodka. But I don't know about Ari. Ari might just show up and get it.
You better
done.
pretend to be Cody's friend and then get him when he's when he's not in the right frame of mind.
Yes, for real. For real. Ari might sick Obo on me or something. He might say, "Listen, get rid of this Duke guy. What the hell is his problem?" Well,
I'm glad he's sick Obo on you and not me.
You're safe, and I want to keep you that way. Don't come over this side. Let me be the heel here. Don't come over this side. But I'm pissed.
So you're gonna hold on. You're gonna be the Bubba of the bunch.
I'll be the Bubba.
See? I don't have Bubba like that anymore, but now I got you to take Bubba's place, so that's good.
Which one's worse?
I come off looking the good one.
That's right. Hey, listen, man, that's why we're here. We got to make sure that you're the good cop every time, But honestly though, Devon, I'm upset about the fact that if they didn't give themselves the bonuses, I wouldn't be talking like this. The bonuses put me over the edge. These guys gave themselves fat bonuses, and it's just millions of dollars. And it's like, you know what? You guys are rotten. That's a rotten thing to do. It's rotten. And I don't have another way to describe it. It's rotten.
No, I understand the frustration in that. I get it. I absolutely get it. And it's
you can't
sad
keep everybody.
No.
You can't keep everybody.
No.
And every time you get rid of somebody, you make a spot for somebody else to come up, like these NXT kids and all that. I don't have a problem with that concept in general. But you ain't going to give yourself millions of dollars and then talk about you had to cut budget over here. Stop it.
Yeah. That's not good.
It's not good. So, again, rest in peace, Ted Turner, a legend. We owe a lot to him, a cable television legend, and the man that knocked WWE on their ass. So, there it is.
That he did. That he definitely did.
It took the Dudley Boys and others to save that company from ruin. Just keep that in mind there, TKO. Keep that in mind.
Oh, boy, you really must not like this guy.
I don't like greed, bro. God told us about that. I don't like greed. It's like, I was rocking. Listen, I take hits for that company, man, and not because anybody asked me to, but just because I understand business. I take hits for saying that. People, oh, you kissing their ass. I'm not kissing their ass. I just understand business. But when you start giving yourself multi-million-dollar bonuses, brother, when times are tough, the first things that go are the bonuses. You don't enrich yourself and kick everybody else in the ass. I don't believe in that. That is wrong.
True that. Yep. No, I agree with you on that. I agree. Not denying that. I agree. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the way you feel.
Yeah. Listen, when I was a kid in college working in retail as a manager, and we used to have bonuses when we sold big ticket items, and I was very good at that. But I was a manager. So whether I sell a couple of big ticket items or if I is one thing, but if I get my staff to be able to do it, now we eat even more. So sometimes I would actually get a customer to the point where I know they're going to buy it, and then I would bring in one of the kids to close the sale, and they would get an extra $100 in their pocket as a result of that. So I'm essentially taking money out of my own pocket and putting it in their pocket because it would go a little further. But here's what that did, Devon. That boosted morale to the point where it didn't matter how tough of a manager I was. It didn't matter how quirky I am. People were ready to run through a wall for me because they knew I'm going to put some money in your pocket. As long as you do the right thing, show up to work on time, make sure you got your uniform straight, treat the customer right. You do all that, I'm going to find a way to put some extra money in your pocket. And we had the flagship store. So that's my philosophy. Treat the people that work for you properly, and business will be great. When you start getting greedy and you're the only one that could be enriched, brother, you and we got a problem.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. I agree.
Let me wrap this up before I get you in trouble. What's the best way everybody can keep up with you and the YouTube and all that good stuff, man?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be on YouTube, of course, every week. Devon Dudley YouTube channel. And, of course, my Instagram at Testify Devon. Facebook is private. I've said that numerous times. Although I say it, people still try to get on it. And it's not going to happen because, again, there are pictures that are private, family and very close friends that don't need to be out there or put out there. Because every time I put pictures up on Instagram or what have you, or even when my Facebook I didn't realize wasn't private, pictures were popping up, and it was like, no, but you can't say anything because once it's out there, it's out there. So, I make that private, and I have my wrestling school, Devon Dudley Academy in Winter Park, Florida. We've been in existence since 2007. So it's been a long road, a long highway, and hopefully that expiration date doesn't end anytime soon. I'm enjoying what I do, trying to get the future of pro wrestling stars ready to take it to that next level. I've been on a successful run for a long time with people that have been in WWE, that have been in AEW, been in Japan, so my record speaks for itself. We have one of the greatest core trainers I feel around, and Dan Carr, who was the original creator of the American Gladiators. He was also what wrestling is, what Hulk Hogan is to wrestling, he is to arm wrestling. He is considered a god when it comes to arm wrestling. And he's also responsible for that Olympic boxing team that either went undefeated or nearly did go undefeated. He was responsible for getting them in the shape that they were in and things like that. He has his degree and all of that stuff, and he does a great job. Anybody that's come through my school has always given Dan the praise and the accolades that he has gotten them in the shape that he's been in. And I will say this, no matter what the performance center throws at the students that get tryouts after leaving my school, they can't blow them up. That's how good of a shape they're in. And I take pride in that. And I thank Dan very much
for all his knowledge and support for the school. He was Bubba's ex-father-in-law. And when Bubba left and moved to Connecticut at the time, Dan decided to stay with me here. He didn't want to leave Florida. He stayed here. When Bubba opened up the new school over there in Connecticut, he decided to stay with me, and he's been with me ever since. So he's been with me since 2007. And he's a crazy old man. He reminds me of Mickey from Rocky 3. He's that type of crazy. And I always tell him that all the time. He goes, "Why do you tell people I'm crazy?" I said, "Because you are crazy." I said, you're crazy as hell. And he goes, "Yeah, but when people hear that about me, they think otherwise." I go, "No." I go, "Once people know you, Dan, they love you." So that's I had to give a big shout out to Dan Carr. And again, you can find me on Twitter, Testify Devon. I really go on there for marketing, things like that, for the appearances I'm going to be at. So not so much to go on there and talk and things like that. I really don't find Twitter to be respectful with some of the fans. I don't know why, because you can be disrespectful on Instagram too. But for some reason, Twitter just seems to be the one that gets me. So, again, I do have a Twitter account, but I check it every once in a while. But Instagram is where I am.
Good stuff. Good stuff. As always, folks, Duke Loves Wrestling on X, on Facebook, DukeLovesWrestling@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. And all the fat cats over there at TKO, if you have a problem with what I said, just send the drones to me. Don't send it to Devon. Send all that stuff to me. It's okay. I'm a big boy. I can take it. But I'm going to tell you right now, you better bring a whole army, because I'm going to inspire these wrestlers to stand up for themselves and stop taking this garbage from you fat cats. You got millions of dollars in the bank already, and you're going to enrich yourself even more off the backs of these wrestlers who could barely walk a couple of years after they retire, and you have the audacity to cut their contracts that you agreed to, by the way, that you negotiated and agreed to. You're going to cut these contracts. That's business, but then you're going to enrich yourself with more millions. Go to hell.
We have raised the ire of Duke.
That's it, brother. I'm a man of the people. That's it.
Listen,
Please.
the word of the week is this. The word of the week is this. Do not, under any circumstances, piss off the Duke.
Oh, we're going to get heat for that one.
That's the 5.
Strictly for the culture every day. Step in style in your unique way. Patterns and colors so divine. All about the perfect line. Be yourself, let your spirit fly. In this fashion, you'll touch the sky. Strictly for the culture, brand so fine. Dress to impress and show your shine. Strictly for the culture, every day. Step in style in your unique way.
Visit www.strictlyfortheculture.ca.
Backstage whispers and the crowds roar. From matching giants to legends of yore. Devon's wisdom and Duke's keen view. Every episode feels like it's brand new. Devon and the Duke bring the heat. Wrestling tales knock you off your seat. Tune in now, don't you be late. Wrestling podcast never fails.